The internet, am I right? You watch videos with it, text friends with it, and pay money with it. But have you ever thought about whether the internet is safe? Imagine that you need to pay your expensive college tuition. You just log into bank.com and say, "Please pay rob your parents' university $40,000. Sounds simple, right? Think again. What is actually happening here? Your browser writes down the message, "Send rob your parents' university $40,000, converts it to microwaves, and sends it to your router. Your router converts these microwaves into electricity, then into visible light, and sends it through cables on poles, cables underground, and cables underwater to a gazillion other routers to forward it to the final destination, where one of the computers in charge of bank.com reads the message and gives rob your parents' university $40,000. Now think about this. Anyone in the same cafe as you, or anyone who hacks into any router on the path from your computer to bank.com's computer, can see everything that you're sending. What if they see your password? What if they change their message to say, "Send Mr. Evil $40,000? Or what if they block the message from being delivered? These three problems are called confidentiality, integrity, and availability, or CIA. Confidentiality means that no one can read your message if you didn't send it to them. Integrity means that no one can change your message or send a message in your name. Availability means that no one can block your message from being sent. It is clear that you don't want any of these three scenarios to happen, especially not when you're paying a college called Rob Your Parents' University $40,000. Let's start with confidentiality. Why would someone want to keep their messages secret? Well, maybe because your name is Julius Caesar and you're defending the Roman Empire, and you don't want your enemies to know every command you're sending your troops. Julius Caesar, whose name is the reason Russian rulers call themselves Tsars, was said to have used ciphers, aka encryption, to keep his messages secret. His cipher is called, surprise, the Caesar cipher. When Caesar had to send an important message like "send reinforcements at once," he would replace each letter with the letter 3 places after it. A would become D, B would become E, and C would become F, and so on. So the message becomes whatever. So to get back the original message, you shift the letters back. It's a simple trick, but was quite effective at the time, because a lot of Caesar's enemies couldn't even read, and those who could would probably assume it's some foreign language. However, this is not a good way to keep people from knowing what you're sending to bank.com. First of all, Mr. Evil can create accounts on bank.com as well, so he can observe how you're encrypting messages. No matter how complicated or obscure your encryption is, if you're encrypting messages the same way for everyone, Mr. Evil is one of them, so he can see how messages are encrypted. You might hear people phrase this as, "Don't rely on security through obscurity." That's when there's an easy way to break the encryption, and we just hope people don't discover it. It's like hiding your key under a rock. As soon as Mr. Evil finds out, you will be able to get in your house. Security through obscurity is almost never a good idea. In the book Del Toro Quest, Leaf uses a cipher where you just add the letters EL all over your message so it becomes unreadable. However, if the algorithm is discovered, you're finished. On the internet, it's really hard to keep your algorithm secret. Therefore, our clever designers of bank.com moved to a higher ground. All of their encryption has keys. Each user has a different key, and the key determines how your algorithm encrypts. all customers share a secret key with bank.com, and any attacker who doesn't have the key cannot read the message, even if they know the entire algorithm. If your key is discovered, you can just generate a new one, which is much easier than developing a whole new algorithm. In a Caesar cipher, the key is the number of letters you shift, but even if you have a different shift for each user, there's still only 26 possible shifts, and it takes very little time for someone to check every single one. You can also replace each letter with a random letter, for example mapping A to S, B to G, and C to C itself. This way, the key is the one-to-one mapping of letters. And yet, even then, there are ways to break the encryption. For example, in English we use the letter E a lot, and Q is almost always followed by a U. It's not hard to use these patterns to break the encryption. What we need is for A to sometimes be converted to B, but sometimes C and sometimes D as well. If any letter can be converted into any other letter, the enemy surely will be left scratching their heads forever. That's exactly what Germany did in World War II. The Nazis used a machine called Enigma, which uses rotors to keep track of an internal state. On the outside, it seemed to scramble letters completely randomly. As long as you set some initial rotor positions before starting encryption, the resulting ciphertext will always be deterministic, but almost impossible to predict if you don't know the secret key. However, since we are not all ruled under German overlords, Germany obviously lost World War II. For that, we owe thanks to the greatest nerd of all time, Alan Turing, who broke the Enigma encryption. How did Turing manage to break such a complicated cipher before computers were even invented? Well, there are two big problems with the Germans' encryption. First, a letter was never encrypted to itself. If the original letter is A, the encrypted message might have a B or C, but it never becomes A again. That breaks the symmetry and allows you to gather some information about the message. Second, the Germans repeated certain phrases a lot. Many of the messages invariably started with Hail Hitler, so that gave away even more information that made it possible to break the code. Incredibly difficult, yes, but still possible. Moral of the story: personal worship is bad. Unless you're worshipping Alan Turing. Okay, so Enigma was not perfect enough. But there's more. You see, even if you don't give away the entire message, you can still give away something. Let's say you use the Enigma to send the message, "Send rob your parents' university $40,000. Encrypted, it might look like this. Sure, Mr. Evil will have no idea what the message says the first time, but if tomorrow you send the same message to bank.com, Mr. Evil still won't be able to read it, but he will know that it's the same message as last time, because the same message is always encrypted to the same thing. That could be valuable information. Remember, any leaked information might allow Mr. Evil to break the entire code, like Turing did with Enigma. Is it possible to have a cipher that doesn't give away any information at all? Well, actually, yes. It's called the one-time pad. You see, any information can be converted into a lot of zeros and ones. Text, images, sound, software, you name it. Then, to encrypt it, you just turn this long string of zeros and ones into a scrambled string of zeros and ones. For each digit, you can either flip it or don't flip it. The secret key is which digits you flip. For example, one key is flip, not flip, not flip, flip. As long as you and bank.com both know which digits are flipped, you can both read the message. But to Mr. Evil, the ciphertext will look completely random. It doesn't matter how many times you say Hail Hitler, Mr. Evil will never figure out the secret key. Please don't say Hail Hitler though. Wow, what an amazing encryption algorithm! Why didn't the Germans use it? Because the one-time pad sucks. Sure, it is theoretically perfectly secure, but is hardly any good in practice. Because you need to specify which digits to flip, the secret key needs to be as long as the message. If you're encrypting a 10 GB video, then you need 10 GB key to send it. If you watch 10 encrypted videos every day, then you now need 100 GB of shared key every day. If you are able to securely share such a gigantic key already, why don't you just share the message in the first place? We need some way to encrypt large messages with only a short key. Well, actually, there's a theorem in cryptography that says, if you want a perfectly secure algorithm, you have to have a key as long as the message. Oh no! That means we can never have a practical encryption algorithm, and the internet is doomed. Just kidding. Obviously, the internet exists and your passwords haven't all been stolen yet. Or at least, I hope not. So how did they do it? Well, it turns out we don't need a perfect algorithm. We only need an algorithm that is good enough. What do I mean by that? Well, perfect secrecy means if I encrypt Hail Hitler, the encrypted message is completely random. I could give the encryption to Turing, or Einstein, or Putin. But as long as they don't have the secret key, try as they might, they'll never ever be able to figure out that it was saying Hail Hitler. So what is good enough secrecy? With good enough secrecy, the encrypted message isn't completely random, but it looks completely random. Anyone can take the encrypted message and will be able to decrypt it. It'll just take you super long to decrypt it, like longer than the age of the universe. So it's no longer impossible to break the encryption, but for all practical purposes, you don't need to worry. The technical term for this good enough secrecy is in CPA, but I don't want you to fall asleep. An example of an encryption algorithm that our internet now uses is AES. It stands for Advanced Encryption Standard, and yes, the name is very fancy, but what it actually does is mash up everything really fast so no one can tell what on earth is going on. I'd love to tell you all about details of how it works, but that will have to wait until a future video. Actually, no one has mathematically proved that AES is good enough secure, so it's technically possible that tomorrow a nerd working in her basement suddenly discovers how to break AES, but since no one has broken it yet in 20 years, we'll trust it for now. Of course, AES is not the only cipher out there. Some similar algorithms are 2Fish, 3Fish, Serpent, and Salsa 20. Apparently, AES was originally called Rigendale? It's too bad we're stuck with this boring name, but hey, it does the job of keeping Mr. Evil out. Now you get to pay your college tuition. Yay!